Welcome to the Panther Planet podcast. This conversational series explores how international traditions, cultures, and experiences impact one identity as a local and global citizen. This season, Pader, Ava, and CRIS are going to show you how our interconnected worlds are smaller than we think. And despite our differences, the human experience is universal. I'm CRIS.
This is Pader.
I'm Ava.
And this is Panther Planet. The Panther Planet podcast is produced by the UW Milwaukee Global Studies Department, UW Milwaukee Language Resource Center, and UWM students. It is founded by the U.S. Government National Resource Center grant.
His name is Ralph Leonard, who I mentioned earlier, and he's going to talk about, we kind of left off about gatekeeping. And in his words, identitarian gatekeeping, this cultural insiderism, from the phrase from Paul Gilroy, empowers self-appointed guardians to establish a cordon around cultures and appropriate the right of license, hence entrench in their own social power. We're going to talk about kind of the irony of this. And an irony of this argument, according to Leonard, is that most opponents of cultural appropriation proclaim, often radically, to be for diversity, immigration, and multiculturalism. Yet these are the same people who bitterly resent the actual results of this symbiosis. They mark off the permission rights over who can use what cultural form, and this diverse cosmopolitan society that we want, the freedom of expression, the cultural innovation, and the experimentation, the expansion of one's own horizons and liberation of the imagination is actually lost. And we still want that, and that's a value that we seek as people, as a society. So today I'm going to let Pader take it over and talk to how we can appreciate.
Yeah, so there's definitely many different ways you can go about it, but definitely you would want to do research. And I know research in itself sounds like very academic-y, but I think research can be as simple as involving yourself with those communities, asking questions, and it can even just be like a Google search. You know, it doesn't have to be like you're reading 50 articles, you know this and that perfectly. You know, it's taking initiative, and I think that's what's really important, doing that type of research. Also, even getting invitation by those communities, or even if you're inviting yourself into like those public spaces where cultural events or ceremonies are like occurring, I think you're inviting yourself into that space to be respectful and to educate yourself. And another way just to culturally appreciate is to really just like amplify those cultural voices and the culture itself. Like you're not like a know-it-all, right? But you're acknowledging that there are cultural voices and that this is that culture. And Chris, I know like you had done some research on Gen Z's favorite Google thing, which is TikTok.
Yeah, I did a lot of that. And I found a lot of things. But as I mentioned in part one of this conversation, there's 4 main markers when you're trying to decide is this appreciation or appropriation of a culture. But even before I get into the 4 markers, disclaimer, minorities and people of color and all those groups are not Discovery Channel. Mm-hmm. And going to them, it's not like going to Discovery Channel or Google.com. You are going to a person, so have that in mind. They're a real person who has their own life. They are not a dictionary or an encyclopedia. They're human just as you are. So think of that. Also, first point, as you mentioned in the beginning, is invitation. Invitation is really important because most of the time they are for a finite amount of time. There's different types of invitations into a culture. I guess that the most simple or casual way of invitation is, let's say that I, Puerto Rican, invite a white friend to my house to watch West Side Story and eat mofongo. In this scenario, yes, I'm giving you my traditional food, but it's not this big secretive thing full of meaning behind it. Very cultural, like, oh wow, you're giving me a fungo. What is this? What's this cultural significance? It's just a dish. Yes, it has a purpose. The reason is we love plantains, and they were all around us, so we created wonderful dishes full of plantains. But no, it doesn't have the secret to eternal life, of eternal youth. I know we Latinos look young for a very long time, but that's not it. It's just a dish. You just should enjoy it, and that's just being invited into the culture for a little bit. But there's other instances. For example, if I invite a friend to, let's say, a wedding, and in this wedding, it's a very traditional wedding, so we are wearing traditional costumes. And let's say I have this friend, and I'll tell her, you can wear the traditional Hibara costume because it's part everyone is wearing to the wedding. For this amount of time, you are allowed to go out, buy this costume from ethically sourced places, and also places owned by people from that culture. I'm not buying a Hiwara costume from Amazon. Yes, thank you very much. I've seen a lot of those. Horrifying. And throughout the time of the wedding or the event, whatever event it is, you are being allowed to partake into this culture, this clothing, or the dances. If I tell you, come dance Mom Band Plana with us, you are being invited into that. But of course, this is an invitation that has a finite amount of time. You are partaking and being part of this through the instance of the wedding. After that, this is just a memory. It's not like you're going to be wearing the Hiwara costume everywhere you go. Also, invitations can be a public open invitation, like a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown, or a square bomba dance, which are public events. And if it's public, it's open to the public. That's your invitation to come and partake into the culture. So that's another way of thinking about invitation. So have in mind invitation. Also, going into a second point, we have the intent. Why do you want to partake into this? What's your thought process? Why are you going out of your way to be part of this and partake into this and have a relationship with this culture? It's really important. And that leads to point 3, the relationship that you have to that culture and community. Is it that you grew up around this community? Is it that you have a spouse that is part of this community? Whatever that scenario is, what's your relationship and proximity to these cultures? And these are the steps that are most, I'd say, hard for them people, because then you have to start asking the right questions, which are the difficult questions. Is it, pardon me, am I looking for a culture of my own? Is it that I don't have culture and I'm looking for a culture to call my own? Or what is the reason? Why is it that you are so interested in this? And that sometimes can be uncomfortable, but that's part of the conversation. That's part of the things that you have to ask yourself to understand these things. And know if you are appreciating a culture for the right reasons or just appropriating. And finally, understanding the intersections and privileges. Most of the time, if you're a white person, you have privileges, colonial privileges most of the time, and you need to think of the things you're doing and what those things will mean and represent. So having these 4 things in mind, of course, this is a very gray area situation that needs to be kept in mind. And ask people from that culture, go and ask. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, if it makes other people from that culture feel uncomfortable, most likely the chances are that you are doing it wrong. That's just the basic feeling. But if it's more tricky than that, then you have these 4 steps or guidelines to use.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk a little bit more into that and give examples, especially shopping local, which is something you can do globally and locally, like right here in Milwaukee. It's kind of neat. There's like been this rise of cultural appropriation in terms of celebrities and tequila. Tons of celebrities, from Kendall Jenner to The Rock to George Clooney, have the money and the means to be able to make tequila and sell it at bars and whatever else. It's a $4 billion industry. And celebrity-owned tequila businesses actually, they don't go to the people who make the tequila. They go to the suppliers and the people who are being paid, via through celebrities. And the agave plant takes like 8 or 9 years to grow. They're like chopping this process in half to pump out as much tequila as they can. Like, moral of the story is they put a bunch of additives into it, and there's all these different things. Shop from places that actually are family owned or have been there for generations and are doing the process ethically and correctly. And I think that's really important. Like, if you're going to go out to eat and like, oh, I want to support a local business, but I want a specific ethnic food, like, buy it from people who are doing it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the whole tequila thing, there's a specific way in which you have to do tequila, and for you to make tequila, it has to come from a specific place for it to be called tequila. So any other thing that it's created resembling tequila, but it's not made in that area or by that product, it's not tequila. Although you want to brand it and market it as tequila, it is not. It's the same thing with champagne. If it's not coming from the region of Champagne, it is not champagne. It's just bubbly wine. So have that in mind.
Yeah, again, it's just more about like doing your research. But at the same time, I do want to talk about the idea that when someone does present their culture to you and you're like, oh, okay, this is new, this is something that I want to be appreciative of, I think people can fall into the context of making their culture their entire identity and basing it in that, and I feel like that's not very healthy too. It's, I want you to treat me as a concept and a bunch of traditions, and I don't know, I just feel like there's a very fine line between like being yourself and exploring and sharing a part of who you are, and then making everything about that, so that's all people see of you, and that's all you see of yourself.
Yes. Are you talking about the person who is invited into, or the person who is from that culture?
Both.
Okay.
Like, it could definitely be both.
Yeah, because I've seen both scenarios. Because we see a lot of, I'm a Desi Y from almost Nigerian, but at the same time, when you have the other part of that, people, yes, you should be very proud of where you come from and your culture, but you should make that your whole personality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think, like, when I think about as a person who studied abroad before, like, a lot of study abroad students are like, I know this and that because I went to go do that.
Oh my
like,
God,
it's
insufferable.
like you don't know like the entire culture. Like, yes,
Right.
you did have some like cultural experiences, and like you did experience some things, but it's like that doesn't make you that culture or
God.
those groups of people.
And those same kids are the ones who said, if I weren't in another life, if I weren't white, I would be Asian or a Korean, or I would be, I don't know, Indian or whatever it is. No, you have your own culture. You are not. You are very much in this life, and in this life you are white, yo. So stay away from us.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's something that I feel like white people get a lot of like crap for, and it's not everybody. Like, we know, like, people know that. But I also think like, I have a friend who's part Polish. And so she is learning the language and study abroad in Poland and is really reconnecting with her roots. And I think that's such a good thing. To say that white people don't have culture isn't true. And I think that people forget. And it's really easy when we see examples of people, like, I don't know, making fun of someone's food. Or, like, we listed a bunch in the last episode. But, yeah, culture is for everyone. Everyone has one. Everyone has roots. Everyone has ancestry.
And talking about your previous example with that friend of yours, comes back to the step 3 of the process, understanding your relationship to that culture. There's many people who have been taken away from their cultures, and now as adults want to reconnect, be it through they were not taught their mother tongue because they needed to learn English, or because their traditions were looked down upon and they were completely taken away from the culture and they want to go back to it. Of course, you have a relationship to that culture through a historic relationship that you should go back and learn from your culture, but of course with respect. Go to the right sources, go to the elders, go to the people that know. Please don't use Wikipedia, for the love of God. Don't use Wikipedia. I mean, I guess that's a good start.
Yeah, starting
but
point.
Don't let the whole knowledge of that culture come from there. Mm-hmm. Most of the time is wrong, if not all the time. So have that in mind.
Yeah, I also think watching testimonials or YouTube videos from people who are actually from the culture is really more helpful, I think, than Wikipedia or something else, because you're not treating it like a project. It's just about the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think for like making culture your personality, I think there can be some like good examples. I feel like that phrase just sounds very negative. I mean, it's meant to be negative, but like,
yeah.
I guess for like me.
You know someone like that?
Huh?
You know someone like that?
No, I'm talking about me.
Oh, okay.
Because like, well, like, I don't think it's to the point where it's like it controls everything I do, but like it is a big part of my identity and personality to like share about like my Hmong ethnicity, because like we're not well known, right? And I think in that sense, like, you're sharing your culture, your history, like I don't think that's bad. I mean, of course there's times and places, and I think that is where it becomes like, why is that your personality? But I think like, you know, you shouldn't feel ashamed of like wanting to share.
I guess that the case with minorities is that we are not only representing ourselves, we are representing the place that we come from and our ancestry. Which is all kinds of messed up, because we should only have to like worry about how we look ourselves and like the thing that we're doing, how we're reflecting in ourselves. The fact that you have to represent a whole country,
like there shouldn't be like a responsibility.
But it is. I mean, what we're gonna do? So we best represent, and I feel like most minorities have shown that they have great examples of people representing them and doing great work. Representation matters, we always say, and the media has become very vocal about this. Representation does matter, and someday, if we have enough representation, then we won't have every single individual having to represent their country all the time. So, in the meantime, I guess we'll have to, but we're striving for a future where that's not necessary anymore. But that brings us to the gray area once again, particularly with the case of mixed race individuals. Because I know that back when we were doing research, we were talking about the whole Asian influence in Latin America as a whole, from centuries ago, and the fact that most Latinos, I would say all Latinos, their whole existence is to be mixed race. They are a mix of multiple races. But now we have seen a bigger the example of these mixed races is becoming stronger because of the new. I know that the new term is called Lation, which are mixed race kids who are Asian and Latino. And there was a study made that probably by 2050, the population of Latians in the Latino community will be of about the 25% of Latino community. So that's a big percent. And Latinos are everywhere. Therefore, Latians will be everywhere. But you see, now there's more interconnectivity between these two cultures, Asian and Latino culture. And this is where we get more into a gray area, because yes, they are Asian and they should have complete access to the culture from Asia, and their ancestors and all that. But also they should be allowed to have access to the Latino culture and all the ancestors and all these things. And as the world continues to be, we are no longer living only in our country. We are living as global citizens. And as people keep marrying one another from different countries, and mixed race kids keep appearing in different shapes, forms, sizes, in all ways possible, the lines between cultures keep blurring and blurring and blurring, and they will continue to blur. And now when we are gatekeeping, now it turns more, if it was a gray area and a tricky subject in the past, now with this blur of these lines, it's more complicated, it's more gray. And I guess this is a conversation. Disclaimer: we don't have all the answers. We are just like you. We're just figuring things out. But we want to emphasize that these are questions that we need to start asking, because this conversation about appreciation and appropriation, are working for now because they're great. We are understanding the terms of this as the culture is working as of right now. But the world will continue to evolve, the world will continue to change, and the people in it will continue to change, and the conversation needs to evolve and change with the people. So we cannot just set in stone whatever we're thinking right now. We need to have an open mind and keep evolving with it as people will continue to change through the ages. So it's very important that we get to understand that.
Absolutely. I think it just poses a question with like all the mixing and the acculturating. Is what was considered appropriation now going to be, like, is appropriation itself a passing trend, I guess is what I'm asking.
I guess that using the word, the appropriation as we know it today, could be, I'll say, in the words of Justin Bieber, never say never, our favorite white Joe. I don't know. As I said, this conversation will change and will evolve. So, do I think that there will be no longer any difference between appreciation and appropriation? No. Heck no. That'll continue to happen. But the way that we think about it and the way that we go about it into the world will probably be different. And as I said, I don't know if I said it on the previous episode in this one, but language evolves with culture. And in the future, we'll continue to have new vocabulary to express these new ideas and ways of thinking that perhaps we don't have right now. But as of right now, this is working. And although I am a very avid, or I'm of the opinion of, if it's not broken, why fix it? Sometimes there are certain things that, although they are not broken right now, there will be very soon, and you need to start thinking of how to replace it and make it better. Upgrades are always better, well, most of the time.
Yeah, I think kind of going with that, I do agree that appropriation and appreciation, like how it happens, won't change in the future. I think it's not new now, you know what I mean? Like, it's been happening, and I don't think that's going to change. But hopefully, like, in the future that it'll be, I don't know if better is the right word, but I'm going to say better. Like, for example, maybe we don't have to consider, like, the majority is taking, but now we can think about, like, multiracial people, or kind of thinking more of, like, intersectionality and thinking of cultural appropriation in that sense, rather than right now, like, majority and minority.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that this is not something new, because, well, not everyone remembers, but if you remember the 1920s, a lot of appropriation upright, like, there's no blurry line in here. There was a lot of appropriation happening with Egyptian culture after the tomb of that, I don't remember the name. Tutankhamun, yes, was discovered. Everything and everyone had to do with Egyptian culture. Makeup, clothes, dance, everything. It's obsessive. It like the 1920s looked like a costume party, like a theme party of Egyptian culture. Um, so this is not new, but hopefully we'll get better and we'll understand how to partake into cultures without disrespecting them or stripping them from their cultural significance and meaning, and their people who belong to them.
Can I ask you one quick question? What in the 1920s, was it like the wealthy that were able to throw these parties? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
and take the, like, who
the people
was it everybody?
It's the type of people, I mean,
It's like the influencers, like we talked
exactly.
about, like who
Like,
sets
first,
the trends.
the archaeologists found the tomb. Now the socialites, who tended to be the wives of these archaeologists, got obsessed, and they throw these lavish parties. They bring all these things from Egypt, and not only Egypt, but towns around, like countries around, and they didn't notice the difference.
Yeah.
But towns around, also Morocco and other Middle Eastern countries too, brought all these things. And of course, the rich and socialites are doing these things. The common folk will also like to partake into those a little bit too. And of course, they didn't know better, or did they? That's a good question. I don't know. Because, I mean, in my 21st century brain, I would think that that is a given. But,
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like, okay, well, that's culture, that's appropriation, that's trend.
yeah, like,
And yet it becomes culture.
like the line is blurring out, but back then I don't think it was that blurry to know. Just thinking that you were Egyptian all the time, that being a white socialite, it's not it. But why wasn't that? I'm sorry, listeners. I keep going in tangents and I forget where I was coming from. But yes. Trends are not something new. They have been here for a very long time, and they will continue to be here. We just need to understand how to go about them, and not become copycats like the early 1920s.
Yeah, I think talking about it, and I know you just kind of mentioned it, Ava, but like trends become culture and traditions. So like we're going through constant changes of like new habits and practices that form like our new culture and like possible like traditions.
So yeah, as we were saying.
Absolutely. So trends become culture, culture becomes trends, traditions change and adapt. So today we have constant changes of new habits and practices that form our new culture and possible traditions. And here we are in our new segment talking about It's a Thing.
Oh my god, I'm happy you bring this up because we who have grown up on the era of the internet, we know that we love our internet language, and we know that everyone and their mother says it's a thing. So welcome to this new section of the podcast where we talk about, is this a thing? Well, yes.
Or
This
it
is
was.
a thing. Or was. Or it is. Or it will be. But yes, it's a thing. So we have a couple of other things that I want to talk about a little bit that to us they seem completely normal, but if we bring ourselves back in time before the social media was the big muggle monster that it is today, would have seemed completely out of the world for us. So, do y'all remember dance challenges?
Yes. You know, it's funny because it is a thing and it still is a thing.
And it will be a thing.
Yeah, I was watching this movie called The Fallout, and there's like just this little scene where her little sister's like dancing to like a TikTok in the background. I'm just like, wow, like it is a thing, and like it's funny to see it, and like now we have like evidence, like it's in a movie, like it's an actual thing that happened.
Sometimes I am very jealous of my grandparents because any of the weird stuff that they could have done in their youth, it's erased from history because there's no evidence from it. But any weird stuff that we did in our youth is documented, and it will be here for generations to come. And I'm very scared of the future because of that. So, next thing, slugging is a thing.
Can you define what that is?
Yes,
don't
we
know
can
what that
thank
is.
the term slugging from K-Beauty. Thank you very much. It's just get your hand, bunch of moisturizer or Vaseline or whatever it is, and just lather your face in it completely. Like, it's very sticky. So your face is completely covered by the moisturizer, the cream, the Vaseline, whatever it is in it. And it's supposed to hydrate your skin and have all these benefits to it. But the whole slugging thing was very popular in Asia, and through, I believe it was TikTok, white girls started slugging their faces, as they call it. They renamed it into that.
Why would you name it that?
I don't know.
That's okay. Like,
I mean, you have to look at it.
That, yes, but also, why is it slug? Why is it slug? I don't want to be like reading between the lines, but like if we're talking appropriation, why don't do like glowy skin or like mermaid skin? They call it all sorts of things. Why slugging?
Yeah, okay. If you see a photo of the process, you'll get a better understanding.
It's a little more messy.
It is very much like it. That's not the type of stuff you would do before going out. That's the stuff you
like
do
an overnight.
Yeah, like you're home. No one is seeing your face. You're like, when I say slathering, I mean like bucket of whatever cream it is.
Chris is using a lot of hand gestures right now that you can't see.
I'm sorry, I talk a lot with my hands.
It's really animating before.
Yeah, but you take a bucket of whatever cream it is, you put your hand in there and bring like a big amount of that product and you slather it across your face.
So you kind of like...
And it's chunky.
It's the excrement of a slug.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's called slugging. So it is a thing. If anyone
wants to resurrect this trend, you get hydrated skin.
I do like glowy skin, but that whole slugging thing, like, no, it's just cryptocurrency and NFTs. It's a thing.
Blockchain. I feel like that's not going away. If anything, we're just starting this.
And I'm thinking, is this just like a trend that's going on right now, and people will look back at it in the day and think like, what were they doing? What were they playing with fake money? Although the money that we have right now, it's also fake. It's just a piece of paper, but like more
money
fake
as a
money.
Construct,
exactly.
You guys. Let's really get existential.
Yeah, that's another episode right there. But more fake money that you can't even touch, or we can go the other route, and this will be the only way of money that we'll use in the future. So who knows? But as of right now, it's a thing. What else? Pandemic brain. Like, we don't think about it, but our brains function differently. I think that we talked about this when we were doing research. The fact that throughout the pandemic, and now us being very young while the pandemic was happening, we got confronted with ideas of mortality way younger. Like, most people get these ideas of and understand mortality and how fragile life is way ahead in their lives, almost 40s, 50s, when friends start dying. But we got to understand that way early. And therefore, like, we got a lot of the process of whatever that does to your brain at that age, it happened before for us. And our brains just function completely different. So it will be very interesting to see this generation of old people. If we get there. So yeah, pandemic brain is a thing. Have you like found anything like interesting that you think like this wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't because of the pandemic? Like, my brain works this way just because the pandemic happened.
I actually feel like, well, maybe not like in a brain sense, but like a habit that a lot of people, and especially young people, is
not touching each other?
No. It's like a new term that I've heard of. I don't know if you guys heard of bed rotting.
No.
So it's like where you literally just like lay in bed all day, play on your phone and whatnot, and like you're just in bed, quote unquote, like rotting. I feel
you're
like
not
that.
Showering, you're
yeah,
not doing
I feel like that really
phone.
came from the pandemic, but also like it's really relevant to like our generation. I feel like that's definitely like a thing.
Yeah, it is.
I think how people interact is definitely different.
Like, I do remember back in the day, Latino, at the end of the day, Latino, you go into a room, you greet everyone with a kiss on the cheek. And during the pandemic, don't come near me, stay 6 feet apart. And I don't know if you remember those old movies of those girls who, white girls who wanted to look European and kissed on both cheeks, but from a distance, like, mwah, mwah, again, gestures. So most people turn to that. And I feel like if it wasn't for the pandemic, that would have never happened, because we are very, like, touch people.
Yeah.
We like to touch. And now that the pandemic has been gone for a while, it's going back to that because we couldn't resist ourselves. But for a while, if it wasn't because of the pandemic, that whole "don't touch me" wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so another thing that I didn't realize until I did the research was the Great Resignation. It's a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one of those things that will be written about in history books.
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, we had for the very first time a large amount in industrialization. What's the word? Industrialization?
Yeah, industrialization.
Industrialization. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Since that, people quitting their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like in a big amount never seen before. And that's something that would have never happened in the past, but because of the pandemic, it happened, and it's a thing. And just rapid run through the last few things. Being woke, BIPOC, cancel culture, podcasting, and vibes. Those are all a thing.
Yes. Talk about languages trend and all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like language, it's become trendy from different communities, like using a lot of words from black communities, but also queer communities. And also, I know that we mentioned this on the previous episode when talking about appropriation and all that. People using words that they don't necessarily understand just to sound cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I forgot the name this in the previous episode, but the language polari. It's a queer language invented, used by queer people to communicate with each other in a more safely manner in a time when even the thought or the hint that you were queer could get you in a lot of trouble, if not death. And all those words have meaning, and they mean something, and they're very important to the community. And just any white girl over there who wants to be with the gays and all that, and just uses the word without understanding what it means and where it comes from, it's frustrating.
Can you give examples of words you have heard
Yeah,
been appropriated or?
I'll give you a quick example. Let me just, I have one right here.
Chris is currently Googling.
Yes.
Is like mask one of them, like mask for masculine?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Or like femme
Or-
for feminine.
Femme, power bottom, tops. Also, it has a lot to do with the BDSM community also too. You have your dumb tops, your soft tops. It's a whole thing. You have, again, a lot of inspiration from our Japanese friends, Yaoi. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Pardon me if I didn't. BL, also comes from that. Okay,
I've heard of BL.
so some words that are not. Oh, okay. I have a one that's still very prevalent, and everyone should know. Mary. When you call someone Mary, it's just the way of saying girl. It's practically the same. It will, like the word girl and Mary, or pardon the word BITHCH. Yeah, I won't curse here. It's, you can use them interchangeably. Or also, are you a friend of Dorothy's? That's also a code for are you gay? Also, some of the old words are Ajax, which is short for adjacent to. Bagaga, which is taken from the Italian bagaggio, for the member. Fantabulosa, which is a blended word of fantastic and fabulous with the suffix osa added, coming from Spanish. In Spanish, we use fantabulosa a lot. Or bevy for beverage.
Sorry, it just makes me laugh because my brother and I were on vacation, and he had his like bevy and bath, and we called it like it was just kind of a joke, but like we said it and it was funny.
I didn't know that.
Vada or varda is to look, potentially from the Italian word for see, vedere. And there's a lot of others.
Yeah.
There's a whole dictionary.
What like do you feel like those are still relevant? Like, is there?
They have evolved and they have changed, but thanks to the Stonewall movement and civil rights and all these things, we don't have to hide it so much.
Yeah.
So you get to there was no need to use the language anymore, so it has gone out of fashion and people have forgotten it. But the language came from Victorian Englishmen and different other countries who had to hide it. So a lot of these words, the most popular ones, are still used. And in certain circles of the community, they are still using the codes and the words of polari. And there's different versions of it. And there's also codes which are not verbal. We have the whole handkerchief code and the little details like there was, I don't remember the name of the flower, but there's a specific flower, green flower, that represents gay men, and it's a flower that Oscar Wilde always wore on his blazers. And there's different, all around the world, there's different, what's it called, symbols and things that to the normal eye, they wouldn't seem nothing out of the normal, but to an expert eye, as I would like to say, they mean something, represent something. You just have to look carefully. But it's very fun. Polari is very fun.
So our simultaneous embrace of macro and micro crazes, and more specifically the effect they have on us, is what author and critic Chuck Klosterman describes as the feeling of an era. In his book, The 90s, he writes about how we understand and in turn remember stretches of time. Decades, he says, are about cultural perception. Despite an overabundance of historical information, the collective memory of the decade tends to be simplified and minimized, dictated more by the texture of time than by anything that transpired. And yet the texture is what mattered. So without further ado, we're also going to list off a couple things that were trends.
And we're just going to fangirl about them and reminisce about the old days.
Yeah, reminisce, talk about history, how it ties into what we're doing today.
So first things first, let's talk about challenges. We all remember the 2010s, most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them we would like to forget, but we still remember the cinnamon challenge, the mannequin challenge, the bucket challenge. Bucket challenge was a good one. We'll go back to that. Things like Pokemon Go and Tamagotchi. Y'all remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's funny because like even like there's a lot of musical artists that I listen to that they'll bring up Tamagotchi for whatever reason because they were a kid of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and so there are things where they live in a bubble, but they resurface. Like, isn't the 90s or now they're like pushing Y2K right now?
Mm-hmm. But before that, it was the 90s. Yes.
Yeah.
And fashion is cyclical. It goes in cycles, and everything that was popular back in the day will continue to go. What I am a little bit worried about with that situation is that right now we are a little bit obsessed with aesthetics and trends.
Yeah.
And the fact that we are so obsessed with it, I fear that it will not allow for the normal process of cyclical fashion to continue because, yes, we take things from the past and bring them back into fashion in the present, but we change them. We get inspired from them. We don't copy and paste. We get inspired from it, we change it, and therefore we make something new, and the process can continue. But now, as a lot of youth are very obsessed with aesthetic and replicating these looks from the past the same way that they were in the past, I fear that we won't be able to advance or to evolve and to make it our own if we're just copy and pasting. So that's a little bit scary, but also interesting to see how we're gonna manage.
I think you can also, even if it is an aesthetic, like, oh, I like these pieces of an outfit, or I can reuse the stuff that I've had in my closet forever and curate the aesthetic because it's so broad. So I feel like there's more room for creativity.
I mean, that reminds me of thrifting. Yeah. That's another trend right there.
Yeah, true. Sustainable, but
okay. Yeah. Trigger warning. We're gonna talk about two things that are from our past that we would all like to forget, but that's just a warning. Mustaches and keep calm posters. I know, I said it. We all remember 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and sadly 2019. Full of mustaches everywhere. In your hair, in your shirt, in your tattoos of mustaches. Mustaches everywhere. And God, they were horrible. And then we had the Keep Calm posters. What are some of the Keep Calm posters that you saw that are like very special, let's say, for you, that you remember from back in the day?
Well, isn't the classic like keep calm and carry on? And
that was one of them. There was many of them. There's many different versions of them.
I actually don't remember many, but it makes me think about, like, I feel like that's when memes really started. So I'm interested of, like, how memes will be like in the future.
We should do a whole episode on that someday.
But you could memes as... Actually, that's a way to communicate, too. Talking about language as trend, memes as trend.
I mean, back in the day, people used to communicate through hieroglyphs. So, little pictures.
And equating memes.
Yes.
The backbone, they're like
hieroglyphic in equivalent. 1,000 years, people will look into our memes and think... They will look at the kombucha meme and think, what is the philosophical meaning of this? What were the ancient thinkings? Brittany Broski and her kombucha meme will forever be part of the internet history. Well, I think I found some of the posters. So, the one that you mentioned, Keep Calm and Carry On, that's the most popular one. But we have Keep Calm and Love Taylor Swift. Keep Calm.
That could be resurrected lately, actually. Talk about eras and decades.
And Keep Calm, there's a pin for that. Keep calm and drive a BMW. I don't know what that is. Keep calm and love math. Keep calm.
Said no one ever.
Oh my God.
It's giving a middle school poster.
I feel like that poster was created by a math teacher and put in her classroom. Keep calm and read a book. Keep calm. I'm the doctor. Keep calm and love your mom forever. Keep calm and bake a cake. Keep calm and support your team. And there's many more. And yeah, we won't get into that. That's a dark age. Those were the dark ages of the internet. Also, we have our favorite dapping bottle flipping. Who didn't love that? We have selfie sticks. We remember those monsters. They were everywhere. And now, something that has returned, and I believe and I hope it's here to stay. K-pop, K-dramas. We all remember that age. We are in the age of Korean everywhere. But we remember Gangnam Style back in the day. People didn't know what that was back in the day, but now we know that those were some of the first K-pop songs to become mainstream for the very first time. And now we are obsessed with everything that comes out of that country. We are guilty of that. We are K-pop stans in this house. We love K-dramas and all that. Anything that you have to say about that, Pader? about
I
K-pop
feel
and
like, yeah, I
K-drama.
feel like I like how you said Gangnam Style was like the first mainstream thing. I think like definitely like coming back like nowadays, like BTS like really made it super mainstream, especially in
They're
like the
historic.
States.
They will
Yeah.
be in history books.
Period. Um, but yeah, I think it is interesting to see. Also, like I know when we talked about like even like fashion,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of things really do come in cycles.
And I feel like there's a lot to be thankful to the K-pop idols in terms of fashion, because God knows that men's fashion has been the most boring thing for the last 100 years. Thanks to the British. We won't get into that. It's controversial. I'm sorry. Pardon, British people. The thing is, that's been very boring. Like, women's fashion keep evolving and changing every 5 years. Completely different. And men have been wearing the same for the last 100 years. And K-pop allowed for more color, patterns, and cuts and different things to explore, and it's wonderful. I'm having a blast right here. So I'm just very thankful. So, looking into more trends of the past that you didn't know were trends, but they really were, and now are part of our culture, and some of them are also part of our traditions to this point, are cars, electrodomestics, cell phones, MySpace, social. Those are some of the trends that became culture, because everyone has a phone. Almost everyone has a car. Electrodomestics are in every household, but these are things that in the past people didn't have, and when they came out, it became trendy. Everyone had them. Everyone had to have them, and now they are just part of the household. They should be there. They're part of the culture.
Yeah, I think like a specific example I think of is like that kind of like died out is like having a home phone. Like I know like my family used to have a home phone for a while, but now it's just like you don't need a home phone. Like you just have your individual phone.
Yeah.
I still remember the days when the home phone would ring at home, and I had to run with the phone to my grandmother's bedroom for her to get it. But then I forgot there was a cable, and I just...
How far did you get?
To the hallway.
Okay.
Like, the cable wasn't long, and I ran, and I got to the hallway, and when I was... Abuela! And I just jumped back on the cable. And it was horrifying. It's like one of those movies where you get snatched.
It's just yanked.
Yeah, it just
real
yanked
quick.
me back. I was a little kid. So yeah, I do remember those days.
You're here to live about it, or to tell about it. Survive
Yeah.
the home phone.
I have trauma from that. What about Green Lawn?
I actually think that's interesting that you
I
guys
know.
brought that up because I know like at least for America it's very much a thing to like have a green
You
lawn.
need a green lawn.
Yeah, but I feel like in other cultures and countries like it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can do research about this. It's a very interesting topic. It talks about cultures and politics of the time. But the green lawn was invented in Britain in the late, I believe, 1700s or 1800s. Don't quote me on that. It was just to create a sense of, what's it called? Most of the people in power, people who had money because the industry that they worked most of the time were farms. They had land that needed to be reworked. Just to make a space in between the estate and the land where the workers were, these lawns were created to be a beautiful piece of art. It was just a green lawn. And then the French took it, and you all remember the great Garden of Versailles, and different ways of gardening. And the United States, although they wanted to stay as far away as they could from the British back in the day, they did take that sense of the green lawn being a sense of status here to the States. And that's something that has become tradition here, although it was a trend. Or the norm. Although it was a trend because before that, people didn't do that. They used to have more like Sylvester type of landscapes around the houses. And that's changing now. People are starting to actually see the types of lawns that they like and that go more with their style and going towards those things. Also, wedding dresses. And white wedding dresses. I know that I mentioned this on the very beginning of the first episode of this two-parter episode. But the whole wearing white to your wedding tradition at this point, it's really a trend. Queen Victoria from Britain was a very simple woman who just wanted to get married in a white dress. She liked a white dress. That's the end of it. Nothing spiritual, no any meaning behind it. She just liked a white dress, and she wanted to get married in that, and she did. And as I said on the beginning, people, the trendsetters of the past were royalty. Everyone saw the queen getting married in white, and they wanted to do the same. And everyone in the Western world started wearing white for the wedding, and then creating this whole mythology behind it as you have to be pure and all that.
Yeah.
It's not the case. She just liked a white dress. Before that, and in many other countries still this day, you wear extravagant costumes and dresses with different colors and jewelry, and you need to see some of these ethnic weddings. They are better than the Met Gala. So yeah, that's a trend.
I think adding on to that and like color and like type of events, I was also thinking of like funerals.
Mm-hmm.
Like people always wear black. And I don't know the history about it, but I was just thinking about it. And I know like Ava, you found something else too.
Yeah, absolutely. So our traditional colors, like representing femininity and masculinity, masculine blue, feminine pink, it was actually the reverse, like centuries ago. And the reason for that, I think, is in Greek mythology. Like, red was supposed to be more masculine, like for war. And, yes, that's why. So it used to be the reverse.
No, it only changed in the 1950s just to sell toys. Which is very funny to think that they were switched in the past, as you said. They're thinking of Ares, the god of the war, being red and pink being such a similar color to that. Yeah. It's really funny that now they changed completely. Now pink's for girls and blue's for boys, which is just
or it
dumb.
holds so much weight. Yes. Too, like when you see a color, you associate it with.
Yeah, that's a boy toy. That's a girl toy. Yeah. Which is just.
Do you think that's changing?
That's
now?
changing.
Like especially when we were talking about fashion earlier.
I think that yes, I remember actually, in the past. God forbid you like a guy to wear a pink shirt. Oh. Go ahead. I have thoughts about this, and I'm not gonna share them.
I was gonna say, like I saw on TikTok actually very recently that, like at a baby shower or like a gender reveal, instead of doing like pink or blue, they did green or purple, and I really like that because honestly, I forgot which is which I feel like is good, right? Because we don't have like the gender association now.
Wait, so you mean that the baby is going to be a Joker?
Huh?
You said purple and green. Those are the Joker colors.
Oh, I was thinking Barney. It gives Barney.
Oh, that too.
But yeah, like those are like the that's like the thing nowadays. Like
those are fun.
It's a thing, right? Like to have like green or purple, or like even like neutral colors.
Yeah.
Like beige. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see beige in a baby shower. Like you can use any color on the rainbow. I don't want to see beige. Please. But that's just an opinion. Do what you want to do.
I like beige.
I mean, I do like beige, but on a baby shower,
it can be cute. I mean, like a beige.
Well, think about people do yellow when they're like, "Oh, I don't know what gender the kid is gonna be."
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What about? Okay. Hair locks for posterity, or weird mustaches.
Yeah, facial hair and like. Centuries ago was really wild.
Yes. If you search weird mustaches and like just beards from the 1800s, 1700s, you will be surprised and not very happy that you searched that. Those were wild, those were weird, and yeah.
It's funny that we think that stuff is like creepy now. Or what about the trend of not smiling photos?
Thank
throughout
you.
the
And at the
centuries, and now
time, that was the
smiling?
height of fashion.
Right.
Like that man that we saw in that photo with the weird mustache,
Like,
that
just
was the bullet
curved.
hadid of their time.
Or like ridiculous sideburns.
Oh my god.
That's sideburns needed to go.
People, listeners, you need to Google that. I don't make myself responsible or any of our cast members, but you need to search for that. It's a fun time. Also, what about snails being painted on medieval paintings? I didn't notice this until someone mentioned it to me and I looked into it. And there's a bunch of snails being painted in medieval paintings just to represent evil. But the reality is that it was just a joke of the people painting this, the monks painting the paintings. What brings me to the whole the art of painting letters or art around manuscripts of that is very known of medieval texts is called illuminating, and most of the people illuminating these texts weren't very much in agreement with what the actual texts were saying. And if you look into these manuscripts, there's a bunch of jokes in these sacred ancient texts that have a bunch of jokes in them. Like, you look into it, it's a fun time. Sneakers. You want to talk about sneakers? And we're talking about the shoes, not the chocolate bar. But they were invented in 1917, and before that, everyone wore dress shoes. But sneakers became something very popular, and everyone started wearing them. It was the trend, and now everyone wears sneakers everywhere at any time.
Or like sneaker con, and like people pay ridiculous amounts of money for the box too. It's like the box has to be intact. And
yes. Like,
it's a whole niche. That's like a subculture. It went from like pop culture to subculture. Yeah.
Then we have jeans, who are for the workers, but now everyone needs to have at least 50 pairs of jeans, different jeans, ripped jeans, full jeans,
leggings.
That
could be a trend
the
as
color
well.
jeans,
Ooh,
everything.
leggings. That's a good one.
What about beauty marks?
Oh.
Beauty marks are not like right now not very popular, but
no, but freckles. Think about
freckles
people
are very popular now.
Freckles.
That's true.
But like 2000s beauty marks, but that's not something that they just invented then. Also comes from France in the 1700. If you Google French beauty marks of that time, you will be surprised. I won't spoil it for you. It's a fun time. I know it looks like there's graffiti on the face of people, but no, those are beauty marks. And that's the only thing I'll say about that. You should Google it. So you have that. And then on a more serious ending note of the weird trends throughout history, we have neoclassical architecture, which is heavily inspired by Greek architecture. And at the time, people thought that Greece, ancient Greece, was the height or the peak of knowledge, intellectualism, academia. So everyone wanted to represent that power and that intellect of that time. And that's why we have neoclassical architecture being used for government buildings all around the U.S., particularly, even our capital, the White House, courts, and many different places around the U.S. are all done in that neoclassical style, just wanting to replicate the power and the luxury or the exclusiveness. I guess it's not exclusive anymore, but of ancient Greece, which I think is also a little bit of cultural appropriation, but we won't get into that. Will we?
Yeah, does it count? Oh, wait, this is actually a good question. Does cultural appropriation, does it count if the people aren't there to, or the trend is gone, or the people aren't there to advocate for it? Is it just not up for grabs, but is it part of, like, humanity as a whole?
I would say so.
That is something that I don't have an answer to.
Okay.
I feel like yes. because like you would want to support that, right? Like
Or,
if
like,
I'm
keep
gonna
it
be
alive.
saying that like, oh, you're cultural appropriating, like how am I not gonna like if I know of it, like how am I not gonna stand up for that? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was saying.
I mean, and we're not even gonna talk about the museums,
Yeah.
British Museum, and many others out in the world. Don't sue me, please. But yeah, that's a very vivid example of cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is alive and kicking. So be careful of that, be mindful. You have all the steps to that, but now outside of having just the steps to know the difference between appreciating and appropriating a culture, as a whole, we as humans have trends to inspire us, but there's a way.
You can take inspiration. Inspiration is good. That's appreciation. But appropriation is more like stealing or debasing or not valuing something. You're valuing something for the surface level, not what's really going on underneath, I guess. And I think you just have to be informed.
Yeah, and I think like just going real quick on the inspiration, like that doesn't, remember, it's not like an excuse. Like saying it's inspiration isn't an excuse. Like you can be inspired, but you're still like, you know, giving credit and
or
like
making something unique. You're not just taking it and passing it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, like copying isn't the highest form of flattery by any means. So today we want to invite you to understand yourself, to the version of you that is listening today, the version of you next month, and the version of yourself that you actually haven't met yet. You aren't a trend, you are a person, and we want you to remember that you are not the fullest version of yourself, yet you have the ability to discover who that person is. You can be inspired by natural happenings, read, dream, create, taking the good and leaving the bad, receiving from your organic surroundings, not the virtual reality of technology. And if you are basing your identity in the past or what's being spoon-fed to you via social media, you are becoming stagnant. Trends can be seen as a way of romanticizing others and come from the need to be desirable. We invite you today to allow space for doubt and to leave the trends behind, because you are more than the sum of aesthetics, your looks, or your past actions.
So love yourself, do you, get inspired, don't just copy paste, and do what makes you happy.
Period.
And we'll leave you with that. We'll see you next time.